finish the section, and then we can do the questions. I will leave specific points for us to go through. So, presentation brought by me. What we're going to talk about, we're going to start off with group composition. Then we're going to talk about strategies on the fort, explaining what pressure means and how that goes around, and any particular tips for weapons, combos, or anything similar to that. So, as you might know, a war is fought by 50 people. If you didn't know that. Anyway, so the normal strategy that we normally use is 3 anchor groups, currently in blue, 1 on each point. Between 6, 7 rotates, depending on how we're feeling, and then maybe 1 specialized group using muskets or hunters. This is usually done depending on the enemy we're facing and depending on what the current objective is. You can see that the anchor group's main role is to stay on a position and hold that down, and the rotate groups are going between the points, and they're showing that there's no enemies in there. And the hunter groups are normally all the way at the back, hunting for specific targets, or they are on the wall as muskets, ready to delete them. The anchor group. Your main objective as a part of the anchor group is to make sure that no one else is on that point. It is your role to stay on that and to make sure that it does not be capped. As you play as the anchor group, you are the lifeblood of the team, and so if you die as the anchor group, that point is basically lost. The way that this works is if your healer dies, you will die eventually. The healer for the anchor group is usually running as form of AoE healing, so Sacred Ground on point, usually. And because of this, it is your role as part of the anchor group to make sure that your healer is alive, because if your healer is alive, you're dead, pretty much. Some good calls to make to relay to the main shot caller. This is if anyone apart from Jappy, myself, Malik, or Mercenario today, or Halls, do these. These are a couple of examples of some good calls to make. So, for example, you would call out that there's 5 on A, but there you're fine. You can currently sustain that. Or there's 10 on A, and that you're going to die soon. You call that out so that the rotate squads can come and help you. Or anything along the lines of, oh, there's 5 people on A, anchor group, come back, kind of thing. Some good calls that you can make inside the team. So every team will have their own TeamSpeak, of course. And some calls that you can make with that is maybe, for example, that your healer is under pressure and that you need some assistance. Where the sacred grounds are placed, if any particular burst heals are sent out, or if there's any particular divers. That's the anchor group itself. When it comes to builds for the anchor groups, normally the way you would have it is you'd have a pretty tanky setup with a big boy tank that's full defenses with sword and shield, and then a variant of Great Axe, Void Gauntlet, or Ice Gauntlet, depending on the rest of your composition. You'd usually have a healer. I put plus or minus 1 because we might be toying with the idea of having 2 healers on the anchor groups so that we can sustain it for longer. And then we'd have bruisers and maybe a heavy mage. The reason why we say maybe a heavy mage is because we need them to be tanky. This is due to the fact that you will need to be on point. And if you are tanky, on point, you'll live. If you're not tanky and on point, you die. If you're not tanky and not on point, you're not an anchor group. There's a quick little chart on what you're supposed to do. So at the start of war, you go to the point. Is there anyone else, enemies coming to your point? If there's yes, you fight on point. If you're fine, you stay on point and you do a good job. If you're not fine, you ask for help all the way down there. Down there. And hopefully Malik or the caller will send a few people over. If you are a tank, you never leave point. If you're the tank, you never leave. Just you don't. If you're not a tank and there's no one there, you are able to join the main fight. Bugginess. You can join the main fight. But do be aware that, as the previous slide mentioned, you might need to come back if people are pushing onto point. If you are part of the anchor group, you will very much know the benefits of having rotation groups. These rotation groups, the rotating squads, are going to be the ones doing the main killing. Or, like I say, clump and dump. The reason behind this little terminology is it's usually the main scenario is gravity well into stuns into death. This is done by cooperating with your inner group in TeamSpeak around these clumps to make sure that no one survives. Because of this, the shot caller, as part of that little 5-man group, will need to, or probably needs to be, a Great Axe user, so that the other two can help with that. Some good calls to make if the shot caller hasn't noticed is where clump might be. This could be there's 15 rotating that your shot caller didn't see, for example, because the main squad is split into two. Main rotation groups are split into two. Three groups on one side, 3 groups on the other. And so if the shot caller is on the other one, he will not see them. Some calls that you could do for the people inside of your TeamSpeak are maybe the direction you're going. Maybe it's a particular target that you're after. It could also be anything along the lines of, we're done here, we need to move over to a different point. That can be also done. Some rough builds that we are usually run is no tanks. This is usually done because the 3 tanks are supposed to be in the anchor squads, but rotating tanks can be used in case. It can also be swapped to during the last fight to get more people on point. You usually run a healer using a Lifestaff and Rapier normally when you're outside of the point. This is due to having to be mobile and following your group around. You will have to run single target heals as well, because they will probably be spread just by the way that the group is playing. You will also definitely want 2 bruisers. These are your clump part of the dump. You will need the CC, and you will need to be able to capitalize on that, otherwise the formation itself will not be functional. And because of the clump and dump, you need damage, and I mean big boy damage. These are usually the top of the charts. It's the Matto, it's the me, apparently, one fight. And these are the damage on the clumps. Do keep in mind that the Fire Mages, the current biggest, highest AoE damage weapon in the game, is very inconsistent. And so if you are, as an ally, standing in front of your Fire Mage, he will not be able to hit that clump. That's just how Pillar of Fire works. A quick little idea on your thought process as a rotation squad. You go to your half, you assigned half of the map, so between A and C, or no, between B and C and B and A. Does anyone need help? If yes, you go to where it says you need help. If no, just follow the main group, follow the fights until something more particular is called. This might be needed if, for example, it's a 25-25 split on the enemy side. Your main shot caller might not be able to see that. You might have a backup shot caller, but not always. In the case of not having a backup shot caller, you will need to make sure that they can survive without you. If the anchor group can survive, good. If they can't, you need to stay there and assist them until they can, and then you can go back to the main calls. The last team composition, this is the Hunters or the Musket group. These are not always used, and they are also not... I don't think we've had proper information about these recently. The role of this group is to make people's life hell. You are the Rawberry, basically. You select individual targets, and you delete them from the game. You don't allow them to play the game. This is usually done on defense. You want to chase the mages, and on offense, you want to chase the healers. This is due to the respawn being closer on the attacking side when you're outside. If you manage to if you kill the healers, the entire thing will slowly crumble to the point where they wipe everyone at once, simply due to lack of heals. And on defense, if you keep wiping the mages, they will never get anywhere. And so that is the main point of a Hunter/Musket group. The calls usually involve individual people. So, for example, you want to get Mook Healer, or any people that have high priority targets. So, in the Cutlass War, we mentioned there was a couple of people, there's a couple of streamers even. These are high priority targets. The Rawberry, the mages. By now, we should have a rough idea on who the top 5 mages, top 5 damage and top 5 healers are on most enemies, and that'll be a good point for these kind of groups to have. The main priority is pretty easy. You find someone you want, you kill him. That's pretty much what it is. You'll follow the main squad, but wherever the priority target is, you should be there too. Because of this team composition, you normally have a whole lot of spears, a whole lot of hatchets, a whole lot of really annoying things to get away from. You can run mages, because the Ice Gauntlets is a really good lockdown tool. But other than that, it is just you be very annoying. In regards to very specific builds, I have included a couple of names of people that should know what they're doing. Um, if if you have a question about a particular build in any case, or if you would like to mention a build right now and we can talk about it, that is absolutely fine. Do you also feel free? I believe Matto made the builds channel under the war section today. If any of these people could add to that list of proved builds, that would be fantastic. Do we have any questions so far?
No, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Woo!
Where are the heavy mages with void gauntlets?
The heavy mages with void gauntlets. I did mention during the anchor section that the tanks could have void gauntlets. These are also the tanks. The mages also can run ice void. I didn't put fire on the anchor groups. These due to the fact that you need to be heavy, and as such, if you're running the two ice void and a void up there, you'll be able to offer the main benefit of having an ice void tank, which is the nullifying oblivion. If some people didn't know, there's a perk on the oblivion skill that once cast, you will wipe every bonus or every buff from any enemy in the area. This is only on cast, so it's not repeated. So this means that any fortifies, any heals that are already down, so if a Sacred Ground is placed down and you put the Oblivion on top, that Sacred Ground does nothing. So as you can probably assume, getting rid of everyone's fortify and healing is very effective. But due to the fact that you have to be on top of the person to cast it, you usually have to be heavy. Otherwise, you end up perishing. That's a good question.
Mr. Luke Calvin, if I may ask a question about your
Really?
healer anchor build,
Sure thing.
why do you choose Beacon over, say, Orb or Light's Embrace, for example, for keeping the tank up?
Good question. The main reason behind running Beacon is because it stacks well. By that I mean because you are most of the time healing the point itself. Using the beacon could be an effective way of getting effective healing down. It might not be the greatest in regards to pure healing output, but due to the fact that the rotating squads will not use it because they're moving around too much, and landing a beacon on a person, as anyone that's used it knows, it's not going to happen reliably. It is a good way of getting effective use out of the spell itself. It might be the case that another spell could be better off, and I know that Halls yourself and others have been toying with different spells as anchor groups, different going heavy instead of light. All of these are effective ways of going around the problem. But I just thought I'd mention the fact that if anyone is going to run Beacon, it will be the anchor groups. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
If anything else when it comes to builds, any more questions? Perfect. We'll move on then. So, fort fights. There are two separate states of a fort fight. There's fighting on the fort outside, and there's fighting inside the fort. These two little scenarios are both written here. The main difference is positioning and the amount of movement inside the fort. So scenario 1 is outside. They have not breached the gates yet, and these are similar positions to what you kind of want to look for. The anchor groups can be moved all the way up to the gates, as there should be no one inside yet. These can go outside to destroy and to CC any targets that are outside hitting the gates itself. They could also be used as a perfect opportunity to repair the gates. I am not 100% sure on how we decide which tank takes repair parts, but I would tend to believe it's the anchor groups that should, as they don't really have much of a role at this point in the fight. When it comes to positioning for the healers, I have selected quite 3 different positions. All of these have positions that are 100% safe when inside, depending on how you position. So up here, if this healer moves forward towards the mage, he will be able to heal outside, but as his current position, he is safe and can heal inside. If you're wondering why there's nothing on the back, as you can see, the in-game image of the backside is garbage. This kind of applies, the same scenario kind of applies at the back gate as well, although vision is a lot harder to hold from outside the gate. So depending on how the enemy is approaching it, it might be a bit harder to effectively use these techniques. One technique that I would like to mention is the positioning of mages and melees. So something that we'll get down in more detail soon is the effective use of jump downs. So as a melee, I've noticed in quite a few of our fort fights, you would go through the gates and immediately get CC'd and died, since people are already using their spells on the gates. What would be an effective way of using your kit would be running around the sides and then jumping behind them. Not only does this give you access to the squishier targets, but it also means that you will not be expected or nor seen. This has a twofold effect. One is pressure, which we'll talk about later, and the other one is clear lines of sight on who your target is and where to go. The mages that are positioned in these particular spots have free damage on that gate, and I mean free. Half my damage in Everfull defense was purely out of this position, and also the main bonus of these mage positions on top of the gates is you can easily go towards the next defense strategy, simply by shimmying a bit to the side. This is a very good position to have, and these bruises that jump down, it is something that you will need to master to be able to do fort fights effectively. When people are already inside, as per the second diagram, this is when gates have fallen, maybe one, maybe all of them. The anchor groups will fall back to the middle points and will be stationed there until the gates have been repaired. If you are the tank with repair parts, feel free to try and get a repair off if you need to. Otherwise, those will be the positions. Mages over there do not move too much. This is due to the fact that the enemies will still have to funnel into those openings, which means that the bruisers on the blues, they can jump down straight on top of the targets that they need and be bursted by mages. Granted, this won't always happen, but during the respawn waves, it will be just after the respawn waves, it will be a good opportunity to relieve pressure on the points by getting rid of reinforcements before they get to the point. Is there any questions currently on the current setup, or anyone would like some more explanations on how any of these work?
I have a question.
Sure, go for it. How can I help you?
Like, why do we need the tanks to take the repair parts? Because when they're inside the fort, it's easier to have other people repair and then have the tanks on point when they're pressuring.
Yeah,
That is correct.
I would give a small feedback as a tank who was mostly repairing.
Go
It was
for
like it was tough to, like, when we had point pressure, when you need somebody to sneak in and just try to repair the gates while they're concentrating on point, and our tanks are defending the point, because I can't be on the both places. And whenever we didn't have the point pressure, they were actually stopping people from repairing, so they were working around it.
So repairing is not or rebuilding is not a guaranteed in any of these fights. The main reason why we gave the anchor tanks the repair parts is usually these anchor tanks are the shot callers for the anchor groups, and as such we can kind of come to expect, but they would let us know if they can, when they can, what their repair part situation is going on. That was the main reason why we chose the tanks. One of the most optimal choice would be the heavy mage, if you have one, to do the repairing, since they can drop their stuff and go repair. So for example, the Ice Storm, they could also self-peel better than the tank, because a tank just shield bash you or stun you and then just run away, I guess. Whereas a mage can still be an effective user by himself. So we would realistically prefer the Ice Mage or the Ice Void Mage, but we'll have to do with what we have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. Any more questions so far?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. How do you think that ramparts should be best cleared? Like, should there maybe be a group assigned to do that from the beginning? Because now in the previous war, it was constantly full of enemies in the front ramparts. At least I feel like it made it really hard for us to position ourselves as squishies.
Okay, that makes complete sense. Is this on defense?
Yes.
This is on defense.
On defense. On defense, you should still have a hunter/musket team. Their priority would be to keep the ramparts safe. Usually what's going to happen is the back ramparts should be free from muskets. This is due to the fact that you just cannot reach the point as a mage from these back ramparts. So mages don't tend to be there. And on offense, you only tend to have a couple of muskets, and I doubt they play positioning perfectly. If you don't have the musket squad at the back focusing on the divers up top, the hunter squads, so the rawberries of the world, should be able to effectively do so. You can also be able to wipe these by using the mages that should be on top. A lot of the time, mages should be running Ice or Void as their secondary, which means they have CC and setup potential by themselves. So they should be able to off cooldown, so off their main fire burst cooldown, they should still have Ice abilities ready to kill these targets that are up top. Does that answer your question, or would you like further explanation?
Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? Perfect. Respawn points. I'm sure everyone by now knows them, but it is worth repeating. The respawn points are 2 at the back, 2 at the front. They are right next to the repair parts and also where you buy. Something to keep in mind is the repair parts station can be destroyed. If it is destroyed, we will no longer be regenerating repair parts, which means no gates being repaired. This also means that it is quite easily to lock down half of your respawns with just a couple of people. This is why I would suggest during the respawn windows, we have talked about this beforehand, where attention needs to be given to these respawn points during the respawn. This can be done effectively by the mages that are standing on top on these. They should be able to jump down and blow the people up that are holding these respawn points. If you do not have any melees there to set it up, I would suggest we should, especially since some of the rotate squads should be walking up the stairs to then jump down on the new respawns coming in from their side. So best case scenario, these melees, because of the distances, all the respawns be at the same time. These melees go onto our respawns, clear them, and by the time they go all the way up, the enemy respawns should be walking through the gates, and they can drop then there, making double usage out of their rotation up the walls. That should be the way to go. Granted, it does not always happen, and I don't think it has happened up to now, simply due to our lack of experience in fort fights. Pressure. This is a thing that I mentioned before, and might be not the easiest concept to attain, simply due to the fact that it's not a written down mechanic in the game. The definition of pressure is attempts to persuade or coerce someone into doing something. You probably know what this means, but a couple of examples are, let's say the enemy is on point and they're capturing it. We don't have a choice. We have to get on point. That's just how it is. That's pressuring us into a position we don't want. Because at one point, we're going to say, well, we don't have enough people. Well, mages go on because we have no one else. At that point, those mages are just going to die, make it from a bad to a worse scenario. It could also be something a fair bit smaller. Let's say you catch a healer in a gravity well. You know for a fact that healer is going to use all of his escapes to get out of that, simply because he's under pressure. You can use that as an effective offensive tool by simply layering and staggering your CC so that once he exits his escape combo, when he has no more stamina, no more escape tool, no more rapier riposte, you can then lock him down then. That is an effective use of pressure as such. Another use is with positioning. So something that we did during the Cutlass Keys War was when we got onto point first and the enemy had not, I called out for the melees to continue pushing. Now, normally you would expect the melees to stay on point, but as we continued pushing, these melees with the pressure of the hammer stuns and the gravity wells effectively stopped an advanced push completely from the enemy. Now, if we had just stayed back, we would have given that free space. We never want to give free space to the enemy. If they only have a little choke to work with, that's worse for them in so many ways. So much easier for you to clump and dump. But as if you give them the space to, if you're scared maybe, or the call was made to not engage, you're giving them the space and the freedom to breathe and do what they want. The less someone breathes, the easier they're to kill. That's not coming from IRL experience, I swear. I hope this makes sense, this conversation about pressure. It can also be gained in the fort reasoning. Let's say you are on top of the gates as a melee. They see you. You're Great Axe Warhammer. What is their options? Well, their options is to kill you. It's not going to happen because you can just lie down and avoid all damage. What else is their option? They just have to wait for you to decide to jump down. They cannot get you. So what you can do is simply wait for them to forget about you, jump down. If they don't forget about you, they're going to be checking over their shoulder at all times. And as a fellow healer could probably mention, if someone is on your ass, you're not going to think about healing. You're going to think about saving yourself. And that makes the main clump and dump a lot easier in the gates. This is something that we need to make sure we know about. It also means that you do not need to jump down immediately to be effective. You can wait for the perfect opportunity, or maybe just even a better opportunity to be able to effectively use your cooldowns. You don't even need, you can keep your gravity well up. The more you keep your gravity well up and on, like, you have it ready to go, the more potential you have, let's say. If you use your gravity well, whoever seen you use it knows you don't have it anymore. So they're no longer under threat. If you get what I'm saying. If you keep it, they have no idea. It's a good thing to keep in mind. Defensive pressure, the way this works, the way the points capturing works for people that are not aware, is there needs to be more enemies than allies on it. This is simple. We should have the 5 or 4 anchor points, anchor group on points. So this means if it starts capturing, there's more than 5 enemies usually. This can be used against us if done correctly, but also it will be an advantage for us. The main reason we need to work on this is the collapse call that has been made. So the collapse call is usually because they are capping it. They've got more people than us on point. So from all sides, all of our melees clump in, clump everyone up, and we one-shot. And then we get back out. Because if we one-shot enough, there should be more of us on there, since we've got our anchor group should still be on there. Therefore, it should tick back. Now, sometimes that's not always viable. We might get clapped back, or we might want to push the capturing process down further before we fully spread out. This can be at the discretion of the main shot caller and their current situation. Or maybe the anchor group died, so you need a couple of people still on there. This is why I would advise you, if you're running Warhammer and Great Axe, to be ready to take some damage. Because on these particular scenarios where you're trying to come back onto the points, you might be asked, or you should potentially stay on there longer than you otherwise would. So some extra survivability will be great. This is also the perfect moment to use the new perk, the Shirking Fortification, since it will be quite easy to proc, since everyone is going to be dropping damage on that one point, including the enemies, for that couple of seconds. And if you get a massive fortify after the main clump, you should probably survive, especially since the offensive cleansing oblivions will probably not be used after the clump. That way you can kind of guarantee some sort of safety at the same time as guaranteeing the point. So these are the points that I was given for the conversations. I hope that we have talked about what you wished. Otherwise, if there's anyone that wants to talk about any one of these in particular in more detail, I'd be happy to have a conversation about it.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
So, this is like about composition and also about like point pressure.
Absolutely.
So we have like usually like let's say we still have 3 points, right? We usually have like one anchor group which is like mainly responsible for holding the point. But
Correct.
especially against gank and like also partly against planewalkers, they basically just on attack have like sometimes 3 teams who all try to hold point. How would you like combat that? Do we just always like kill them? Do we have more people match the point? Do we have, I don't know, like do we do something else?
So is this a scenario where we are defending and they are sending 3 teams?
Yeah.
In this scenario, you're kind of with the way our current comms work, it's kind of difficult because you will need to split off your team. There is no way a 5-man team can sustain 15. So realistically, what you would want is 2 teams or 3 teams, or maybe the entire rotation squad from that half of the map. You would want them to go back and assist. So when we were talking about the anchor group here, there's a point where, do you think you can survive? If the anchor group sees 15 approaching, or even if they continuously approach, they will not be able to survive. So they will need to request assistance. This will be assisted with calls that are proper and clean. So as mentioned here, they will need to tell how many come to point, that would assist you or whoever the shot caller is to be able to properly tally out who should help. If there is any issues with regards to the rotation groups getting there or not getting there, if we end up having a musket squad, they can easily turn to the left slightly or to the right and able to assist with the high priority targets. But otherwise, it will just simply be the case of you're going to have to split up your rotation squads. Did that answer your question, or did that just give more questions?
Yeah, but so the thing is like I'm not really sure. Like, let's say like they push 50B or something, or like let's say they do like 30, and 15 of them like go straight to point. It's like beefy point people. Do you think like we need some kind of like priority groups that like just match the point? By then, no. Like, what should these rotation squads do?
So, I'm a firm believer of if there is no threat, no need to do anything about it. So if they're not capturing the points, just leave
But
them.
they will, right?
If they will capture the points, you will need to dedicate some people to go there. It might be boring for them, but it will be a case of you'll just have to send people to kill them. Otherwise, the point is taken. You cannot afford, because if they are running heavy, they should be able to sustain longer on points. Whereas our groups, the rotation squads, are going to be medium/light, so they are not going to be able to push it down. So you will need to kill them and then rotate out if needed. You will not be able to simply match on point because our current comp doesn't allow that.
Yeah, I think, and that's what like the problem is. I'm not sure how it was today because I wasn't there, but like I think like a problem a lot is that like we have like especially in the first point, we have one group which is dedicated, and then no one else feels like really responsible for it, or like too many people run like medium, and like for composition. And now we go back to composition. My suggestion would be that we have like 2 or 3 more groups that like always feel responsible to be like a mixed match group. Like they do both. They like stay edges of the point, and like they're always ready to like go in and like match these people, these like tanks or heavies from the opponents. And if they are not really needed, they still have enough like potency to still play outside of the point.
This I would assume this could be done by getting some of the rotation squads. So maybe have more of these medium players, maybe to have maybe one of them instead of being medium is heavy per group. That shouldn't be able to impact rotation speeds and damage much because the main damage is not coming from the melees anyway. That could be a way
rotation speed doesn't really change between medium and heavy anyway. Because
not really. No,
like
that's correct.
you're like hopping like with medium isn't very faster, like that
Than
much
walking.
faster than running at all. So
yeah, you're mainly going to be losing out on damage, which depending on the playstyle of your squad, could be detrimental, but probably won't be since the loss of damage is what 15%.
I think it's 10%, and honestly, like in my opinion, like I'm a fan of like mostly heavy. Apart, like I think medium is like only really better if you have like a very good gear for it with like the new perk with a Shuriken perk and maybe like refreshing evasion or something like that. But apart from that, I feel like the damage difference is so like little that you can probably run heavy, and then like you have more flexibility, like helping a point when it's needed. While on medium, I feel like you just die too much.
The main advantage of medium over heavy for bruisers would be the rate at which they can go in and out of fights. It's not the actual like running between the clumps. So if a melee goes into a fight, if a heavy goes in, that heavy is realistically not walking out. He might be able to dodge 3 times if he's got hearty and get far enough, but because the dodges are so slow and the distance itself is quite short, they probably won't. Whereas a melee, as a medium, will be able to triple dodge away or double dodge away to distance, so he's put enough distance between himself and the clump that he will be able to wrap back around and go back for round 2. That is the main difference. So if you're feeling like we're running out of people staying on point long enough to decap it, then maybe it is worth running one of your bruisers in the heavy gear.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Like how it looks right now, aren't like all of our brawlers heavy?
No.
Okay.
I
'Cause
think
in our in our group at least, we're all heavy.
yeah. And I think we haven't really officially said that, but I feel like my group and your group, we are like kind of just helping out point when it's needed from
Yeah.
like our rotation side, which we usually have, like unofficially in a way, which is like fine. But like I'm not sure how it is for the other side. I don't really know, but like it might be good to have like the same setup on the other side, so that like if we are in a 50-man fight, we actually like always have people who can do it from like in a 50 versus 50. Because right now I feel like we're kind of lacking a bit. At least I don't know. Again, like I haven't seen the war today, but like I think this was a problem for like multiple wars that like just like it's a lot of the times we are not really losing, but it's like still free ticking, and then we have to commit to like a collapse, which is always like really, really dangerous. And right now with the respawns, like one like collapse which goes wrong just costs us the whole point. And that's really, really bad.
So I think from this conversation, we should probably mention beforehand. I'd say probably the best way of having it is having one of the 3 rotating squads per side to be mostly heavy. That way, it will be easier for the healer from that one particular group to keep that group alive when they dive in.
Yeah.
And this way, it should help our anchor group go from 5 to. I mean, realistically, the healer's not going to go in. So from 5 to 9 people on point. Maybe their healer won't. So it's about 8 people on point. That should be enough to deep push. If that's not, then I'm sure we can get some more mediums to jump on there real quick. But I think that might be the way to go, is to get one of the rotation squads to be heavier.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion would be like one rotation squad to be like pretty tanky, so heavy. One to be like maybe a mix, and then one which is like more like healer hunter, mage hunter, and like only is like the last stand to go on point, and apart from that does more onslaught the point, something like that.
You might have some issues then if you're making one group tankier than the next. Is that one group that's tankier might not be if you, for example, get rid of the mage, you might not be able to effectively clump and dump.
But I don't want to like get rid of the mage. I just want like the one group which is like first priority to go on the point from the rotation side is like heavy mage, 2 heavy brawlers, and 1 damage dealer. And then like there's one group with like maybe 1 medium, and then there's one group which can like go like full medium or something like that.
Yeah,
or even light.
Yeah.
And then we have like a priority. So the like, first rotation group, which is like pretty tanky. Those are the first people who take care of the point in case the anchor group isn't enough. And then, we go with the second group when it's needed. And then the third only goes in when it's really, really needed.
I would advise writing that down somewhere.
Yeah, sure.
Something like clear and defined. So, for example, 7, 8, 9 are points ABC. 4, 5, 6 are lefts. 1, 2, 3 are rights. Rotates. Number 1 and 4 are heavy. Number 2 and 6 are medium.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that way, whoever gets in just looking at the war roster should tell you what you should play and how you should play it.
Yeah, and if you're in the wrong group and you can't play that, you can like tell us.
Yeah, you'll be able to know beforehand what your role is.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Do you have any more questions? Or anything people would like clarified, or any builds you'd like to talk about? Is the flamethrower incinerate heavy tank mage doing okay?
Absolutely
What
not.
what are
It's
your
fine.
thoughts? Yeah, what are your thoughts on having more GAVGs?
GAVGs. Somewhat perplexed on GAVG. The reason why Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet is really nice is because you have the survivability from the Entomb, and because you have to be on top of the enemy, that Entomb can save you a lot. Ask Karpfen. He's lived way too many times on 1 HP because of his Entomb. If you're running GAVG, you don't have an effective way of surviving on points, and because you have to be on point to get the full value out of the Void Gauntlet itself. So that might be a rough decision to make. If you are part of the heavier group, that could potentially work. But then again, it's going to be a case of you're now not effectively making use out of the scaling on your Void Gauntlet, which could always impact it. So it has potential. I believe there's quite a few people that have done it before. But I would tend to believe that having one GA Warhammer and then one Ice Gauntlet Void Gauntlet would probably be more effective.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could do
'Cause
a
I
Great Axe
feel-
and Ice Gauntlet as
Because
well.
I feel like as playing GAVG, my survivability is very low. Like as fast as I get into a clump, and I'm heavy, it's very hard for me to get out. And I don't have a Warhammer to heal myself up or to peel for myself to be able to get out. But I also feel like that we're lacking a lot of VGs and feeling like I have to play GVGs because we're lacking it.
This might be a scenario of you're going to have to maybe potentially ask people in the anchor groups to run that heavy mage, run the Karpfen build, for example, and then maybe have a couple of people per rotate squads running that build as well. Because you need, whatever you're playing, you're going to need one escape tool, survivable tool. If you're Great Axe Warhammer, that's the uninterruptible from the Path of Destiny, the
Shockwave.
Shockwave that
Yeah.
also heals you. And if you're Void Gauntlet, Ice Gauntlet, it's the Entomb.
I think also, in theory, I think there should be like one VG per rotation squad. Because if you play with your group, you should always have like a VG ready for like sync up with your Gravwell, ideally. And I think the best way to do it, I agree, is with like VG IG. But like the second best option is probably GA VG. There probably are also other options, but I think like with Ice Gauntlet is just the best. And if we have that in every group, I'm not sure if we do. I think we are like kind of lacking, if I remember correctly. Maybe like Wu can tell us more. And then additionally, we have like maybe like either a tank with VG, or we have like a heavy healer with VG that also works. I think then we should be kind of covered for Void Guns Oblivions. I think, right? Because then we would have like 10 at least, which I think is
Yeah.
fine.
I think so too. What were you going to say, Kira?
I was just wondering if we could convert some people to heavy mage, so we could have like 2 heavy mages per anchor group. That way, they would be more sustainable and have more.
I mean, we don't even have one. I think.
Yeah, but if
No,
we,
I don't.
We
I
don't.
think
We
we've
don't.
got
I
many.
don't think we have like heavy mages really in our anchor groups right now.
just feel like
Which-
we should probably convert some people into going
Yeah.
that.
That would be a point I would like move.
In the church.
Like we
Yeah,
need
go
a
for it.
better team play amongst anchor group because we don't really have like a stable anchor groups from one scene. Maybe there's like
Mhm.
one with Daniel that they always play together. For example, I was like the past was I was mostly with different people.
Yeah.
So that one's a rough one since it's nothing we can write down in stone. And as if you've ever played Anchor, you probably know how boring it is. You'll just get your martyr basically for a lot of the fight. So it's a rough one to put people into that position. It's a great one for people that are starting that joining our ranks since it's relatively easy. But it's going to be a rough one to get consistent teams for because if you're in the middle of a clump, you're not having fun. Speaking from experience, at least. If I'm getting
I have
bashed, I
fun.
am not having fun. Well, Karpfen has fun because he survives. So maybe that's what we need to do. Get people, new people, to get in, run Void Gauntlet, Ice Gauntlet, and just survive.
I meant more something like constant parties, like people that always played together. The synergy about them.
Yeah. The problem is, I think
So-
like those are like the spots which are the last filler spots, and we just put like the people in there who are like the last people who are like not regulars or something, and that also like kind of shows. Not that I want to like say your performance is like anyone's performance is necessarily bad, but like if you're like put in the anchor group and you've never done it before, obviously you're not gonna do the best job. But like I feel like what we are lacking is like very consistent pressure on point and like tankiness on point, and that is like natural if we like always put like different people in there, right, who've never done it before. Like I think like one war, I think like 2, like not this war, not the war before, but like the one against Gank and Everfor, which was like a little bit tougher. I think we had like a medium bruiser, for example, in the anchor group, and that guy tried to go on point all the time because that's his like, that's what he needs to do. But then he just literally died like 17 times because like how the hell is he supposed to survive? He just got put in that role even though like he wasn't really fit for it. And I think that's what we're lacking at the moment. If our anchor groups had like consistently just really good tanky players, I think we would do way better.
Kind of go from what you mentioned and Malik's point. I think the main reason why there's no consistent groups is because it's just not that fun compared to rotation squads. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mercenarios groups and Malik's group has been the exact same every war, basically. It's because they have fun together. You clump and dump, you delete people, and then you rotate out. That's fucking fun as fuck. When sitting on point holding right click as a tank, personally speaking, I don't find that fun. So there's
But our
probably
group-
other people that think the same.
But
I
our
know
group is always on point.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
same
but
here,
it's a
at
there's
least
a
me.
there's a
Yeah,
different
we
there's a
jump as
difference
well.
to getting on point and having to stay on point, if that makes sense. You get to see every fight. People that are anchor might not see a whole fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But we are first rotate on C, so we're pretty much always like
Yeah.
there at least in group 5.
But I cannot really find a way to help with team play and enjoying playing with other people and being consistent with that, because that's like a people thing, and as you probably know, I'm fucking garbage when it comes to that. So I'm
Fucking cunt.
sorry, I can't. Yeah, no, pretty much. Being hot.
I was grabbing food when you guys were talking about this, but like there are some of us on Anchor who do like playing together, like me, Nuggets, and Ring In, for example. We like playing together. And so like I think that the people who are willing to do that and don't mind like playing together should be put in a group together. Because it's actually a lot easier to play well and like
Coordinate.
it's really frustrating to get thrown in different groups every single war. So it'd be like better to just play with one group. And I would also argue that like making the anchor groups the random toss in a bucket groups is probably what's making these wars not great, because we're losing the outside points when we should be holding the outside points. So maybe some of the good players should step up and be on the anchor points and maybe have a little less fun so that we can hold the points longer and not have to sweat on the inside for 20 minutes and lose Windsword.
I'd like to just mention that her comment probably wasn't made to sound like the people currently on Anchor are not good players. But I understand what you mean, Hawes. If you could potentially type in the Warfare group section, I know there's a tab I forgot about, where you could detail your current like preferred Anchor group. That way we can more easily put the groups together and always put you on the same team.
Yeah,
That would
and
be
to
helpful.
clarify, you're exactly right. I'm not trying to imply that the people who are on Anchor are not good players, but it does seem like the people who like want to run around and kill people and go smash get to go kill people and go smash together every single war. And you know, it's the I guess I don't remember the exact words that were used, but stragglers, whatever, who are put in the mismatched groups at the end are the anchor points. But I think we need to have stronger anchor point groups.
That could be a conversation if you're interested in running these anchors groups and having a tight-knit group. If we do want to talk about it in the war discussion below, for example, say, hey, I'm looking for a consistent anchor group if you want to be in. That would be helpful for people like for Boog and Co. to try and make these teams and make them reliable. That would be a good way to start it for sure. And also, it might be a bit complicated in a way, but every single one of these groups will most likely need someone that can talk in Discord to facilitate rotates. So that might be something to keep in mind as well.
We'll play Anchor.
I mean, like, if it's really needed, I don't mind playing Anchor. Like, if I really have to.
I would also play
But
Anchor.
I know as well that I'm
Like, you also
already
play
working
Anchor.
really well with my group. But I don't mind playing point if needed.
I mean, our
Group in
next
general is minding the
That's the
anchor
thing is like it's like this kind of like exasperated sigh, like, oh, I guess I'll like play it. And I understand you're probably sighing more that you're like going to be detached from your group, which
No,
is like my point exactly, that I don't get to play with a stable group but you do, and that's what's causing a lot of problems on anchor groups right now, is that every single war, the anchor group is like a mismatched group, and we don't play together every single war, and that causes problems, and that's my point.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say here at least is that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to like help the company out, but then it's also hard because we as a group as well work really hard with communicating with each other in wars, outside of wars, trying to improve ourselves, how we work together and whatnot. And you know, it feels a little bit bad. Like if I had to play another role, then I would give up all that I've worked for on that group, for example.
I think
I mean,
the
It's not.
I
It's not. I'm saying that I don't want to play
but
anchor group.
like
Like I'd love to play anchor group.
no, I
we
think
all have to like change our roles as well. Sorry to interrupt you, Calvin, but it's that like I mean my role on TNAC like was always backline squad rotate, and now I'm stuck on anchor group. So I've had to completely change how I play as well. So what's the difference? Like some of us have to change how we have to play and others don't. Like it doesn't really
I
seem fair.
I think
I don't care
what
about
Malik
changing how to play. Like
yeah so
what's just holding back. Sorry, Kevin. It's just that when you work with a group for a long time, then it's just okay. Uh, all of that hard work, like trying to get it to work in that group, it's just gone then.
I think what would probably please both parties here would be to completely swap out anchor groups every now and then, and to ease people that are currently working on anchor a lot of the time. Because I don't think Mercenario's issue is doing anchor; it's doing anchor with a different group. I'm sure if he did it anchor with his own group, half the time they'd be dancing on point and no one's there, but they'd still be have a great time because they're playing together. I think that's more the case. It's not the case of, oh, I don't want to play anchor with my group. It's a case of I want to play with my group. And I get what you mean, where you used to play backline in TNAC. But the sad truth is, half the people who quit, well, more than half the people, fucking was it 99% of the people that quit the game? So it's going to be the case of you're going to have to remake these friend groups, remake these tight knit 5-mans, to be able to effectively feel like you're part of a group. Because I know sometimes I get put in groups that I don't know the people there, and I just end up playing by myself. As selfish as that is, I don't know what people are capable of because I personally don't play any OPRs with people. I don't know what people do, and that is a big way what leads to Mercenario's success as a group. They know how each other play. I think it's just a case of if you feel like you don't have the group experience, the team experience with your 5-man, it's going to be a case of I would advise everyone that has that kind of feeling to do some OPRs, get to know people, and eventually, if you have a 5-man that like locked in and that you love playing together, we could very easily swap out the anchor teams. I'm sure, like Mercenario mentioned, he probably wouldn't mind playing anchor, but as long as it's with his group.
Yeah, or people that I can have a good gameplay with. Like, for me, it's important in my team that we communicate with each other, that no one stays silent, that people respond to calls, that they confirm calls. Like, for my group, usually I do the main shot calling, and then Rixito would also do shot calls for when he does gravels. I've asked for, like, for example, Inu to tell me when he's putting heals on me so I know they can stay in. I also told like my DPS that I need to know that they're committing with me so that I know that I can commit harder, or if I just need to take it careful. And it's just those kind of things that I don't know how it is in other groups. So that's just one thing that it would suck to have to redo all over again.
Malik's group will anchor.
Yeah, we can anchor. Yeah,
I mean, just the current.
I can't main
Mercenary
shot call
saying-
then, but I would anchor.
Just the current Mercenary saying, like, our group definitely saw today what having random people in your group that you're not used to playing with. I mean, it's obviously like a massive weakness on our group that we're so tight knit that we can only kind of really play together because we had 2 new people and our group's effectiveness just plummeted because we just weren't used to the people we were playing with and what they did and what obviously they weren't used to playing with us. So we definitely do need to try and get those at least 4-mans or 5-mans because I think we'll grow as a company on top of that because everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and it's much easier for Boog to just say, okay, this 5-man's going in there, this 5-man's going in there. And also then we can just, as Luke Calvin said, we can just swap out anchor groups when they're needed. So say someone's done it 2 weeks in a row or 1 week in a row, it's like, okay, you guys are gonna be anchor group next week.
And bruiser synergy is really important. If you just swap bruisers every time, it's one of mess, because the new guy doesn't know what the other bruiser do. And
No offense, could you finish chewing, please?
sorry.
Like, what I'm hearing like here is something that I agree with as well. The brawlers need to hold hand in hand almost.
Yeah.
They need to walk together, and if you have a heavy mage as well, it's nice for that one to try to keep up as well.
And it's really important. Like if you just put 2 random guys, they're just running around and don't like do the same things. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're literally saying the same thing, but I don't know if maybe the way that I'm saying it is coming out differently. But my argument is that we need to have stable groups, or at least like have the majority of the group be people that we are used to working with, because and I don't care who those people are. I mean, right now I'm without a group. Like I used to play in Ifora's group, and that's no longer my group because all of the other TNAC people like left, and I'm without a group. So I don't really care who I play with, but I would like to have a more stable group, because when I get put in different groups every single time there's a war, it's very ineffective for me. And as everyone else, I think maybe has the kind of stability and comfort of their same group and knowing how other people play, they don't really realize that. And maybe today might show some people that it is really hard to play without your group. So I know that also, it's not entirely anybody's fault that the groups aren't stable, because we have people who are not here or leaving or not here every week. But if we can try and make the groups a little more stable, that would be really helpful.
Also, as a side note to that, as a healer, it's kind of like, I know Rixido can take a fucking beating, but if it just gets swapped all the time, it's hard to know how much damage people can take.
Yeah, for sure, because it's not even just the damage taken, it's the damage avoided. So I don't know if any of you you bruisers probably know this. There's some mages, there's some healers that you just will not hit with Great Axe Warhammer. They will dodge everything you do. And some, there is a skill gap here, and it does happen where some bruisers are a lot tankier. They just don't take the damage. They just dodge it. And if you're not aware of that as some healer, it can be rough. I would suggest, if you don't have a group or like a tight-knit community that you're currently playing with in wars, please do type something in the war discussion, something along the lines of, hey, I'm a healer, I'm looking for a squad, I'm looking for some mates, I've got me and my tank, and we just need a couple of bruisers that want to chill with us, and we'll get better together. That kind of shit. Make it a bit more organic in a way, because there is no effective way for management to enforce that. You will have to come forward with, hey, this is my squad, we're going to play Anchor today, or we would like to play Anchor today. Maybe Boog will tell you to fuck off because you need someone else on Anchor, but maybe it's your turn to run it. But it's the case of, you're going to have to go out of your way to try and make these tight-knit 5-mans. Because realistically, we can't really shuffle around the people that are currently in the 5-man.
Just a question, how many stable groups do we actually have at the moment? Because I think we have some, but then we have 6. A lot of... Yeah.
We have 6. So I believe Mercenarios and Malix are consistent groups.
Yeah.
I believe Jingle Jangle, Iana Jandy, Jingle Jangle, has a consistent group as well. Although I am not well versed in who has.
Perfect. Can tell us.
Deep has, Boog has, Malak has, Mercenario has, and
we'll make it easier right now. If you're part of one, write it in the War Groups channel. Done.
Yeah, there's maybe 2 groups are listed there at the moment, and I think one of those is a bit old. So.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, so if you have a consistent group, maybe if there's a couple of people that go in and out of that group, because I know Malik's one, sometimes I'm in it, sometimes Mixie's in it, sometimes neither are in it. Just put if there's some extras, just put in the extra section who's in your group. It would be better if you could follow the example set above by Boog, but that can be dealt with later. That should help people feeling more together.
Yes, I think we also need to prepare that for that. Of course, every night there's somebody who cannot join, and yeah, people.
I think
may
that's a
not make it,
case.
and,
That's a case of that group having to come up with something. I truly believe. As someone that's organized wars before, yes, you can just slap someone in and hope for the best. But a lot of the time, I would suggest if you know someone's missing from your group, make the effort to get someone in there. Because if you don't, and someone gets whacked in, and you're like, oh well, we can no longer work as a group. That's realistically your fault. What was the organizer supposed to do?
Hello guys, how are you? How's everybody been doing?
Yeah, right.
Good.
Okay, so I'm Mr. Pew. I'm main healer. I've been playing this game for a while now. I just wanna ask a few of the experienced healers. I've been away for a bit, but I don't know what right now you guys are playing on. What makes you die quick? What build are running? Heavy, medium, light? What's your point and what's your take on that?
So I'm going to interject before any healers. There's been quite a few discussions, and I mean quite a few discussions in the war feedback group over the last couple of weeks. From what I'm seeing is there are some people trying heavy, but most are still in light healing. Most run Rapier as the offhand outside the fort and then swap to Void inside the fort. There's for multiple reasons, including the massive AoE heal from the orb, but also the Oblivion can help kill those divers on you. Usually the people that are the hardest to deal with as a healer would be a spear hatchet, so the Rawberries of the world. This is due to them having the ability to keep up with a rapier build. I don't believe a single bruiser, so Great Axe Warhammer, is able to give much threat to a healer. But a coordinated group, no matter what they're playing, will one-shot a healer if they're light. It's just simply as is. Hopefully that answers your question. If there's anyone else that wants to interject, feel free.
So my take technically on this, I never die as a healer if I'm on PvP. If Void Bent, my heals are perfect, everything is perfect. So the thing is, I don't think the Rapier is the go-to build whenever he's doing a PvP. You're not doing 1v1, you're doing 10v1. And with 10v1, you can't escape that. But I'm working since now I'm back on the game. It's been like 3-4 days. I've been working on a sword and shield build. I've been having people on OPR 5, 6, 7 on me, and I'm just not dying. So if you've been here for a long time, you know how the healer works. Maybe we can get help some of the tankers to get me maybe go through some certain skills. That would help out a lot. And I do agree the second option would be either the Void Gauntlet or the hammer, the Warhammer.
So the reason why people moved out of that full tank paladin build that was prevalent in beta and at the start of the game was due to the heavy nerf to healing output. By heavy, I mean I think it's something like 30% less healing, 40%, something like that. The main issue with heavy healers, I believe some people have experienced this today's war and yesterday's wars, is you're not living. If they want you dead, you are dying because you cannot escape. Whereas a rapier, the parry is invulnerability for longer than the cast animation. So basically, even if there's a consistent damage or consistent CC, you can parry, and then with the invulnerability frame, use your dash into double roll. Because you're running hearty. That dash plus double roll is so much distance that whoever those divers are, they're usually giving up on you. You are literally the other side of the point. And that is the main survivability tool. It's not actually the rapier itself, it's the distance you're creating. As a heavy healer, you're just going to sit there and die eventually. You're not ever going to survive the entire war by sitting on your own heals. And that also means you're sitting on your own heals. You're going to get interrupted. You're not going to be able to provide the amount of healing to your team. So I believe that builds to be somewhat interesting in regards to the second healer, potentially on anchor squads. That is something that I mentioned before that could be a possibility. as a second healer. The second one would be a tankier one to stay on point. That would be a good use of that build. But I really don't want people to start running that if they're the main healer of their squad, because then the entire squad is just going to feel a lot weaker due to the lack of heals. Hopefully that makes sense.
My take on, if you're saying you're using your way per double roll, you still did not forget that there's also mages and muskets shooting you 1, 2 shots, 3 shots, and you're already dead. With sword and shield, you can tank literally everything. That's the point like I'm trying to prove. You don't need to dodge. Yes, your heals are maybe a little bit less, but the survivability for you, which makes it more survivability for the team, instead of dying as a light gear or medium gear, then you have to wait the respawn time to come back. I think I'll take the survivability for long, even if the heals are a little bit lower.
So the sorry,
But imagine, you have like gravity well on you, the cold shower on you. You have people heavy attacking in front of you, and you have Oblivion under you. You're just instantly dying, even if you're blocking. And you have no way to escape. You can't dodge out of the clump. So one gravity well and heavy healer is actually dying.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That you can't compare OPR and Wars in any fucking situation. No way you can compare them.
I mean, the gravity well is so powerful. It's dragging every people in. Before you could just like stay on the edge and dodge out. That was easy as heavy healer, but now you have like no chance. Gravity well in middle of you, and no shield can defend you.
That's coming from
No,
a tank, by the way. So
But like I'm still using in the sword and shield the leaping strike, which that also helps. Like if you need to get a distance, you can still get a distance.
If you're like clamped, you're not leaping out. It's not like the dash from Rapier that you can just dash
And
through.
the thing with that build is that you are playing only for yourself. So in wars, you are not really helping your group members.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it like that,
you can make like instead of the tank on point, you can bring up your build as the tank, as the paladin. You just work for yourself, you keep yourself alive, and you have also light healer in your team, so you support each other to just survive on this point.
yeah, that could be an effective use. So instead of having two healers, you have one tank running the heal build, running the paladin build. I think the main issue is if you're blocking, you're not healing. And if you want to run a build that is healing whilst blocking, you're running full AoE. So you will have to be an anchor group. So it's a case of, yes, this build can be used effectively, but it is a very slim ratio, and I really don't think we should be advising normal healers to run it.
Yeah, but maybe there is room for both. So as you said, maybe for some of the anchor groups, we can, if we have two or even one healer could run that build. And I don't know
I
how
think
many
for
people.
anchor groups is interesting. Like I think for anchor groups is interesting in the regard that you like even you can run AoE heals and be on point yourself, and like your group still benefits and you're tanking enough. But maybe also the option is to have like two healers, as Luke Calvin said, and then also like. But I think like if you are like on point as like a tanky hybrid like tank healer kind of stuff, then I would rather run like either Warhammer for like additional CC, or I would run Void Gauntlet for the additional Oblivion. And you also get more healing due to the orb.
And also don't forget the you're running Scream, and that gives a hefty amount of fortify too.
Oh yeah, that's true. And like the thing with Sword and Shield is like if you block, you don't heal. You can't, and you have to like switch first and use your spell before you can heal again. So like you have a lot of downtime on your healing if you use Sword and Shield. While like Void Gauntlet is you drop Oblivion, you throw down your you throw your Scream and your orb, and then you go back to healing, and your orb heals as well. So you have like a
Healing
less
is not our
downtime.
problem, to be honest.
No,
Yeah,
but I mean, this is a
I'm
case
just
of
throwing. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
throwing technically a suggestion because I've been running Void Gauntlet since it came out, and I've been working on the Sword and Shield, and I think both, like from my own perspective, they work really good. Like as a combination, if you need a backup, yes, you are thinking as your main self for more survivability. But remember, when you're a healer on point, the enemy's target is to kill you first. If you put your heels down, you know how to put everything down mainly correctly everywhere. Yes, you're not doing any more like full heals on your group because everybody else is trying to kill you, which makes them waste more time while trying to kill you. Like if you're getting my point.
Yeah,
but
so I think
then you're more
let's.
of a paladin tank, right? Than like pure
Yeah.
healer.
So I think this is a case of we should probably cut this conversation. We're just going to keep going around in circles. I do believe the paladin build has its place, but it only has its place in this very specific scenario as the second healer / tank in the group. If any tanks want to give this build a go, do make sure you have a tank Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet in your group, because otherwise you will have no Oblivions, and that will be hard on your team. So do make sure that if you're going to run the paladin build, play around with it with your team. But otherwise, I think it's viable. Do we have any more questions? Anything people want to bring up? Any
What's a
builds?
musket's job on defense?
So the musket job on defense is the similar one to the hunter squads. It is mostly to get rid of priority targets. So this could be, like I mentioned, if you're on defense, then aim for the mages, aim for the light mages. It is quite easy to kill a light mage if you do it correctly. I think it's 4 shots if they pot, 3 shots if they don't. That's with empowering shooting stance. That I can assure you, a mage will not notice you on your first shot. It will only notice when he gets to half health. In which case, if you're coordinating with your team, you can delete them. And even if you're not able to, let's say, find a mage to focus on defense, just start chipping away at the healers in the back. All those light targets, those are the ones that you got to go for. If you can coordinate with the rest of your muskets or your rest of your hunter team, so pinging, for example, or calling out targets, that's even better. Just delete people from the game, make their life hell.
Do they switch in Ford to something else?
Not necessarily. So you could potentially swap to a more AoE build. So you could, depending on how you built your musket. I believe for musket, you're better off running basically no health, max dexterity, and the rest intelligence. But if you are just dexterity, you can run both the inside fort. Otherwise, what I would suggest is to work around the backside here. Like I mentioned earlier, mages cannot hit the point from there. So mages don't usually go there. It's usually just healers and muskets at the top here. Your focus as a musket, once you're inside the fort, will be to focus the people that go on top of these ramparts. So their hunters are probably going to go for your mages that are up top. If you keep them safe, as a mage, I love you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If there's no one on top of the ramparts at all, feel free to just pester the healers that are in the walkway. Because they're going to be behind the rest of their squad. Anything else? Perfect. So it looks like we've got 5 fully set up teams. So that gives enough space for 5 more. I can see there's a couple of people that have been posting in the war groups planning. Do feel free to use that effectively to kind of make a squad together. If you do want to try out off builds, so for example the paladin that we mentioned, please do talk about it within your group to make sure everyone's on the same. Pardon me, on the same page. But otherwise, it was nice having everyone there, and I hope we all learned loads.
Thank you, Kelvin. This was
Thank you
beautiful.
so much.
No problem. No problem.
Great job.
Kelvin.
Thank you.
Give this man an applause.
My microphone
Fantastic.
doesn't pick it up.
No,
Yeah,
no, I was
me
trying
neither.
to talk a little bit.
Hold
and
on. I'm turning off crisp here. Hold on.
Yay! Yeah. Great.
Great.
My pleasure.
So can I stop recording now? Or
Yes, you
Also,
can stop.
lost the siege time.
Yeah.